All right, we're going to get started. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Lisa Shulock, excuse me, Director of Commercial Programs with the Philadelphia Energy Authority, and my colleagues Atiba Kenyatta and Amy Cornelius are with us today as well. We're so happy to have you join us during your lunch hour. And we are here to talk about Solarize Greater Philadelphia. And this is a special meeting that we are holding for people who are involved with environmental action committees in the region. And we held one of these 2 weeks ago, and a number of you were there. It was really great to have you there. I actually had a conflict. I was on another webinar, and I understand that other people, there were some people who were on that same other webinar as me, and there were other webinars going on. So Joy asked us if we would run another one of these meetings, and we were like, sure, of course, we'd love to. So here we are again today. Thanks again for joining us. And we really want to spend a lot of time on discussion and not so much time of us talking to you. And we are, though, going to show you a 15-minute, 16-minute video pre-recorded of a Zoom of myself and our colleague at the Pennsylvania Solar Center talking about the Solarize Greater Philadelphia program. And then after that, we'll have lots of time for discussion and how those of you who are involved with EACs can participate in this program and help grow the program. If you were here last time, you know that there were some technical difficulties. Hopefully we solved them. We'll find out in a moment. Hello, I'm Lisa Shulock. I'm with the Philadelphia Energy Authority, and I am Director of Commercial Programs at PEA. I'd also like to introduce my co-partner here, Alexis Takushin. Hi, Alexis will be speaking shortly, so I'll get started here. She is with the Pennsylvania Solar Center, partners with the Philadelphia Energy Authority in Solarize Greater Philadelphia for commercial and tax exempt programs or properties. So let's dive right into this. Why would you want to invest in solar as a commercial property owner? And here's some reasons. I'm sure there's many more. These are the ones that we think are top of the list. One is that for the next 20 to 30 years, you will have predictable and stable energy costs. As we know, utility costs are rising. And if you invest in solar now, all of the electricity that is generated by your solar will be at the same predictable cost for the next 20 to 30 years, while your electric utility costs are an unknown and likely to go up significantly. The other thing is that you are reducing your overall utility expenses, so it's predictable, but it's also less expensive. In terms of working with us in the PA Solar Center, you have a streamlined, personalized service throughout the evaluation, decision, and installation process. And you're going to hear a lot about that in a few minutes from Alexis. And lastly, but very importantly, there are federal tax incentives that are available for solar right now, but they are not going to be around for very much longer. So if solar has been something you've been thinking about, or you're just hearing about it and thinking about it, the time to act is now, because it will be too late soon. So the Solarize Greater Philadelphia program assists you with your project from beginning to end. And we're so excited for this partnership with the Pennsylvania Solar Center. So what do? We bring together, we provide free technical assistance and unbiased financial guidance to commercial and tax exempt properties in the 5-county Philadelphia area: Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, and Philadelphia. We have a little QR code here that you can go right to our inquiry form. And you'll also get more information at the end of this webinar about how else to reach us. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Alexis, and she's going to be talking about the Pennsylvania Solar Center's Get Solar process.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Dakushian. I'm the program manager with the Pennsylvania Solar Center that's working on Southeast Pennsylvania projects. I'm actually from Westchester, Pennsylvania, so I'm pretty familiar with the area, even though I've been based in Pittsburgh for quite some time. So folks or entities that are entering our Get Solar program, there's about 4 stages throughout the process. Once we have the initial intake call, we look at the sites that you're looking to install solar, whether that's rooftop, ground mount, carport. We take a look at your electricity bills. And through those materials, we're able to use industry standard software to draft the solar designs, to create a high level solar feasibility study and savings analysis. From there, we talk a little bit more about financing strategies and what would work best for the organization. It could range from finding loan options to grants to direct purchase to small and large scale PPAs, which I'll get into. But once we develop a more concrete financing strategy, we put the project out to be bid on by our list of pre-vetted developers, with a little asterisk that we're happy to work with public entities for public bid processes. So we receive these competitive bids from qualified solar developers, and we put them in a very easy apples to apples approach. We review and compare these proposals using our resources and tools, and then set up interviews so you can talk with and interview the top developers. Once we have a developer identified, and that's largely based on who you want to work with, the Solar Center does like to provide unbiased support, so you ultimately have the autonomy to choose who you want to work with in the end. Once you choose and contract with the developer, you just have a more concrete financing strategy and then work with the solar developer to complete the project. The solar developer stays, the Pennsylvania Solar Center stays on the project until install. So it seems like a quick 4 steps, but this does take quite some time, which is why we encourage folks to get involved in the process as soon as possible. And these are some really great examples of what we provide for the solar feasibility study. So as you can see, this is the helioscope design for a large commercial building. It's 294 kilowatts, produces 352,000 kilowatt hours of clean energy in the first year. And we're able to tell you some key metrics, like this offsets 70% of the site's annual electric consumption based on the bills that we looked at. And then we're able to tell you with this financial analysis that you would save over $682,000 on your return on investment over 25 years. And then savings per year would be around 23,000, for example, and then your payback period. And we're happy to again, look through different incentives, whether that's utility specific or just region specific for grant or financing opportunities that would bring down the payback period to the smallest that we can get. Next slide. So obviously we'll pull out those key metrics, but we're happy to provide you the data that shows everything from what our escalator is to calculate the rising electricity costs year over year, operations and maintenance costs, things like that. The Pennsylvania Solar Center is very conservative in their estimates. For example, we only use a 4% escalator for rising electricity costs for our financial analysis, even though we've seen prices jump quite more than that. So we're happy to provide the data and then compare the different possibilities for going solar and apples to apples comparison tool. Next slide. So the request for proposals, or RFP stage, is when the program manager puts out that project to be bid on by pre-vetted solar developers. We have about 76 solar developers in our queue, and we're happy to work with other folks that would meet the minimum requirements, like the industry standard NAPSEP certification, We organize site visits for developers to get a better sense of the project site, and we coordinate all the proposal submissions. Again, work on getting those interviews scheduled, and then, of course, can help with public bidding processes. We have experience with schools, municipalities, things like that. Next slide. Of course, this always comes up. How are folks going to pay for solar? So we look at 3 different options. First is cash purchase or direct purchase. So if you do have capital upfront, you're going to have your maximum financial benefit just by paying for it upfront and not financing. But there are financing options. Philly Green Capital Corp has loan programs. There's CPACE for businesses. And then there's also green banks and partners that we work with that provide specific financing for specific entities. For example, the Pennsylvania Solar Center is working with Solar Faithful, which is a organization that helps churches go solar. And they provide different like lease to own, energy shared savings agreements, which acts a little bit like a PPA, things like that. So there is no shortage of creative financing solutions, and we will work with you to get that off the ground. The third option is power purchase agreement. We typically say that large scale PPAs are used for projects over 500 kW, which is quite large. Utility scale being over 3 megawatt. But there are smaller types of PPAs, like I mentioned, that energy shared savings agreement. There's also other opportunities through different partnerships that the PA Solar Center and PEA are working with to provide sort of smaller scale PPAs that basically function as a supply contract. So you would lease your property and buy electricity at a discounted price over 25 years. This is an amazing opportunity to go solar because you have no upfront costs, no operations and maintenance costs, and you're able to go solar and predict your electricity costs over 25 years. So it's a very popular option for folks in the Get Solar program. So going into the federal tax credits, the commercial federal tax credits are still in place, although they are slated to be phased out by July 4, 2026. There were residential tax credits that expired at the end of 2025. But talking about the federal commercial tax credit, you either need to begin construction by July 4th, 2026 to be eligible for a 30% base tax credit plus any adders like the 10% domestic content. And it needs to be, and then you have that to be placed in service within 4 years. So if you contract before July 4th, 2026, you have 4 years to receive that 30 to 40% federal tax credit. And by construction, that could be just putting 5% down on the project. For anything that contracts and begins construction after July 4th, 2026, until December 31st, 2027, you have a very shortened runway. So projects that begin construction after July 4, 2026, you're still eligible to receive the tax credit, the 30 or 40% tax credit, if the project is completed and online by December 31st, 2027. So you have a lot shorter of a runway, but we don't want folks to be completely discouraged from pursuing solar just because the federal tax credit is to be slated to be phased out in July. For nonprofits or tax-exempt organizations, you are eligible for direct pay or elective pay, as it's sometimes called, which just means that you can still get that 30 to 40% tax credit even if you're tax exempt. You would receive a check from the IRS, and it's pretty beneficial in terms of your payback and your return on investment for the project. Another quick incentive that is important for the PICO region, there is a one-time Act 129 rebate. It's basically 10 cents per kilowatt hour produced on your system for that first year. So it's a pretty big chunk of change that you can get if you apply and you're granted this Act 129 rebate by PICO. It typically covers about 5 to 7% of the system cost. So that is not going away. That will be here past July. And it's a quite popular, and it's the best actually Act 120 rebate across the state. So really, we do factor that into the financial analysis. I did cover pretty much what a power purchase agreement is, but just to cover it, just to summarize, instead of paying an upfront cost for solar install, the property owner purchased electricity provided by the solar developer or owner at a discounted rate. PPAs can be extended as long as 30 years. The investor or owner is responsible for any operations and maintenance, which is a huge relief for, especially organizations that operate on a year-to-year budget. And then you can buy out the PPA contract sometimes at the end of the term, which is really beneficial, or you can, sign another PPA. Next slide. So I bet you're wondering, how do I get involved in the Get Solar program or part of Solarize Greater Philadelphia? We would encourage you to submit a Get Solar inquiry at the link provided. It's an intake form that just covers the basics, such as where your organization is located, what utility, how old your roof is, things like that. And that helps us have a better intake call, more comprehensive. We'll go over the sites again, talk a little bit more about where you're located and what you hope to get out of going solar. And then we'll gather, your electricity bills, any pertinent roof or maintenance warranty records, structural drawings if applicable. We do work with folks that their construction on a building isn't completely finished, and we're happy to work with you with that. And then we'll use those resources for the Pennsylvania Solar Center to conduct that solar feasibility study and financing analysis. And we're happy to turn that around to you in mostly 2 weeks' time, pending that we have all of the resources that we require. And then we get the project, started in the process to find financing mechanisms, overcome the many obstacles that like to present itself during a solar process. And that's why we're here. So really excited to work with anyone that's interested. Happy to answer any questions, and yeah.
Thank you, Alexis, very much. You haven't met. Okay. Thank you. Is everybody seeing a slide that says characteristics of properties with good solar potential? Excellent. Great.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So back live in person. I'm not an avatar. I'm not a recording. It's me. It's Lisa. Thanks for sticking with us on this Zoom recording. One thing that after we recorded that video, we realized that it would have been good to also mention, so I'm going to mention it now. What are the characteristics of properties that are particularly good for solar? So most of this is not going to be any kind of a surprise to all of you. You want clear, open rooftop space, not shaded. You don't can't have a lot of trees around that are going to cover and prevent the solar rays from energizing your system. Ideally southern facing, especially if you're building a new building, you absolutely want to orient it south. But if it's not oriented south, if it's more westerly, that might be okay. And newer and structurally sound roofs are critical. Again, we're talking about rooftop. And from a practical standpoint, owner-occupied buildings are much easier to move forward because we don't have issues around one entity paying for the solar and another entity paying their electric bill. So at this point in time, we're really zeroing in on owner-occupied buildings, and also that if a rooftop isn't suitable, there is the possibility of putting what's called ground mount on open land, or putting canopy style solar in parking lots. They do tend to be more expensive than rooftop solar, but it can be an option for some organizations. So that's for now the talking at you that we want to do. And this is the chance if perhaps you want to put your camera on, unmute, um, and we'd love to have a conversation about how you as a member of an EAC might be able to get the word out about this program. And of course, for us to answer any questions about it, we have some case studies we can take you through. In the upper left side of this slide is just a summary of the Get Solar process. We have some links in here. So the links, it will share the slide deck with you after today. So you'll have all of these links. And just one other thing I want to say before I forget is we have 3 upcoming webinars that are not EAC specific, more generally for anybody who's interested in learning about our program. And we have one on July 8th, one on August 5th, and one on September 16th. So I'm going to open it up for discussion right now.
Hi, I'm John from Abington.
Hi,
For the
John.
July 4th deadline, what's the least that has to be done? I thought I heard Alexis say 5% of the investment needs to be put up somewhere, or it says construction needs to be started, but
Yeah,
what's the
great,
best workaround?
great question, John. So we recorded that in May. It's now
Oh,
June 10th. We
right.
have 23 days to go. And that's not even business days, that's calendar days, right? So as at some point we're gonna like edit that video and just like take out anything that that's related to July 4th because it is so close. If you aren't already actively talking to a solar developer, a solar installer about a project, it's too late to meet that deadline. But to answer your question, because in order to get a quote, to have an analysis done, to get a quote, to enter into a contract, it's virtually impossible unless you already have begun the procurement process. But to answer your question specifically, it depends on the size of the system. If it is I have to check my memory. I'm going to check after and correct myself if I'm wrong, but I believe if it is 1.5 megawatts AC or larger, you have to have started physical construction. And then you have to show continued progress. You can't just like put some shovels in the ground and then leave it for 2 years. You have to start progress and continue. If it's less than that, and that's a very large system. You're not,
Right.
if it's less than that for any kind of roof, municipally owned building or a commercial entity, a YMCA, it's going to be way smaller than that. And the rule there is that um, you have to purchase through your solar installer at least five. You have to pay at least 5% of the total cost of the system. And what every solar installer will say is it really needs to be more than 5% of your quote, because
They need
if there's
money.
a price increase, if there's ever, if your $100,000 system today is quoted and then there's some unexpected thing that makes it 110,000, that 5% of 5,000 isn't going to be 5% at the end. So you really have to do more than 5%, and it depends on the size of the project and any complicating factors. But I think most of the solar installers are saying you should do at least 8% of the total cost that you need to basically give them a check, and then they have to purchase equipment. So they're basically, and that's what that's called, is safe harboring. So you basically are safe harboring equipment before July 4th. Again, if you don't have, if you're not well on your way of signing a contract, it's nearly an impossible deadline to meet. Chris, I see you have a question.
Hi, the timelines really confuse me. Um, so no one's going to get anything done by July 4th of this year. That hasn't already started. That's what you're saying. And I understand that. But what's the timeline typically for this assessment to bid
Yeah,
and then the timeline to for construction in order
yeah,
to meet that 2027 date?
right. So if you're not going to make the July 3rd date, as I've been saying, and as you just, reemphasized, then the next best is to finish your project by the end of 2027. So great question. And the process that the Solar Center and we run you through, that process from beginning to end can take a couple of months to do the feasibility study. So Alexis said in the recording that it takes about 2 weeks for them to do the feasibility study. That's after they've received PICO bills, after they've gotten information about the age of your roof, the condition of your roof, etc. Then it takes them about 2 weeks. Then you get the feasibility study, you review, and if you decide you want to, and you talk about financing options, if you decide you want to move forward, then there's a request for proposal process, and that typically takes 4 to 6 weeks from getting it out to having um, a site visit for any interested installers to come physically see the site. Um, and then you're in the selection process. So all told, you're probably looking at, like, best case scenario, 2 months start to finish. And then you're going to make a selection on your installer and sign a contract. So what we are telling people is, if you don't have, if that you need to really, I'm sorry, there's one other thing I wanted to say. In terms of how long does it actually take to install solar, it isn't that long. Especially, we're talking about systems that are probably between 50, so these numbers may not mean anything to anybody, but if you're talking about a system anywhere from like 50 kilowatts to 500 kilowatts, it's usually just a couple of days for a solar installer to be at a site and on the roof. What takes a long time typically is the interconnection process with the utility. So most of you are probably in PICO territory. Um, Pretty much as soon as you sign a contract with an installer, they're going to submit an interconnection application, and you'll get one of three answers back from them. Looks good, maybe, or not good, and we have to do an engineering study. So if you get the looks good, great, and then you're also submitting permitting work to your town, to your municipality, and that varies from town to town around here. I know the Philadelphia um, system the best, but it will vary from municipality to municipality in our region. Um, and so those are the pieces that take more time than the actual construction itself. And then so there's the actual purchase of the equipment, and then it's typically a day, a couple days to install. And then when it's installed, it has to be inspected, and then it has to be by a third party electrical inspector. And then after all of that, then you go to Pico and you say, we want to interconnect. And that piece is very variable. It might be very quick, might be, week or two, and it could be a couple of months. And the reason we actually don't have a timeline slide, Chris, is because it's so variable. It would be ridiculous. You would see, could be this, could be that, could be really small, could be really large. So what we've been saying to people is, if you're seriously considering solar and you want to get that tax credit, then you should be contracting by middle of October of this year. Otherwise, there's as each day goes by, there's a greater risk that you won't be able to get that tax credit. Philip, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, so given the time frame, and I'm wondering about our municipality, and I'm not sure you can provide this, but I'm wondering if you have like average costs for municipalities of particular sizes. I mean, in one sense, if you compared our municipality to many of the ones around us, there probably wouldn't be much difference because we're talking about running the municipal building and public works. So
Yeah, I would say so. I'm afraid I'm going to forget this. I'm going to get to your question in a second. I'd love for everybody who's on the call to put your name and what what EAC group or what municipality where you live, or what EAC group you're a part of would be just love to know that. And Philip? How about you?
yeah, Tredyffrin.
Okay, so I would say, unfortunately, it isn't that easy to. Bill Saby isn't on this call, is he?
No,
I
he's
don't
not.
think. Okay. Um, it isn't that you can't compare one municipality to another. You'd have to look at, because first of all, every electric bill is different and every roof is different. So it really have to be on a on a case by case basis. And um, you can, if you were to look at I mean, the close. I'm just not sure how I would do that. Um, you could certainly get a sense of like, well, how many potential buildings are there that solar could, we could easily look at your town and look at the buildings that are owned by the town and see if those buildings have solar potential. And the reason I asked if Bill was on the call is because he's been leading an effort with, I'm sure some of you on this call right now, to look at a number of, I think, a dozen or so municipalities in our region to that they've identified with good solar potential, and I've been reaching out and trying to get municipal officials engaged in the process. But I I think that the way you were asking the question, it would be hard to like just say, oh yeah, here's the potential for your town without looking
Yeah.
at the buildings and without looking at their electric bills.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing I'm wondering about too is that if we were going to build solar, we'd want to build that with an eye toward the future when we're asking our public works to use non-gas powered equipment and a lot of the things that they're doing. And hopefully,
Yeah.
police vehicles, a lot more of them would be electric. And so
A
I
great
grant
point.
you that would be a difficult
Well,
calculation.
not necessarily. I think it's an excellent point. You can look at when I keep saying we need to see electric bills. You need to see electric bills, and if there are plans for electrification, they can be incorporated into the projections. So there was in that Zoom recording, there was this dense slide about that showed that the financials behind a feasibility study, and it shows like what the expected electric usage is per year, or maybe it's per month, per year, whatever. But you can modify that model and say, okay, right now it's X, but in 2028 it's going to be X plus, and then in 2030 it's going to be X plus plus, because as you
Yeah.
bring in new electrified equipment or vehicles or whatever. So that is it. Yes, it's absolutely a projection, and um, but that is totally possible to do. Um, David, what's your question?
Hi, thanks. Actually, I have two questions. One of them is about batteries.
Hmm.
Are any of your clients getting into the battery question these days, or are you sort of leaving that off to the side?
Yes and yes. Batteries are batteries can provide resiliency in term. There's a couple of things that batteries can do. First and foremost, especially like from a public works or municipality perspective, you can, if you are pairing solar with batteries, you can be off grid at a time and still have electricity when the full grid is down. So that gives you resiliency. There's certainly examples that I don't know of any right in Southeast PA, but where um, organizations and governments are like setting up resiliency centers where they have solar and storage. So that's one thing that batteries are used for. and it's also can be used to help manage peak load. So if you're a company that or an organization, an entity that has high peak demand and you're getting a lot of extra, and that sometimes that can be the most significant part of a electric bill. You can charge the batteries when overnight when electricity costs are very low, or you charge it with the solar. They can be with solar, they can be without solar, and then that brings your peak demand down during it brings your bill down during those peak demand times. There's also you can also participate in what are called frequency regulation. There's a lot of ways that batteries can be economically used.
Right.
In general, what I would say is at the scale we're doing right now, batteries are not they don't pencil out so much from just like a cost savings perspective. Generally speaking, it's changing. Just like the price of solar has come down so much over the years, batteries are coming down, and we're going to start to see it change where it does pencil out in a reasonable amount of time. And I'm glad you mentioned batteries also, because unlike solar, the tax credit for batteries was not it wasn't sunsetted early. It goes through, I think it's 2023-ish. There's like some there's a step down there, but the battery tax credit goes further out than the solar tax credit. So as the prices can continue to go down, we may see that in the next few years it would pencil out to install batteries. John.
Okay, second question, and thank you
Sorry.
very much.
Go ahead.
Very, very
Go ahead,
much for
David.
that. Yeah, thanks for that answer. I'm very interested in batteries myself, and I'm sort of trying to stay up on it. But the other question was, and this is maybe a rhetorical question, but given the uncertainty involved in the Pico connection end of the project, how can we get Pico involved in this instead of being, in this relationship with them where every project has a special need? Have, some kind of systematic involvement of Pico in a project like this?
Yeah, so excellent question. At the Philadelphia Energy Authority, Pico has what they call their Green Connect team. So this is a group that was created, I don't know, quite a few years ago to just focus on solar and other alternative energy and challenges in connecting to Pico. So we meet with that team once a month, and as we hear about issues, we bring issues to them during those meetings, and then there's we engage with them, in between meetings as well. And then the installers in the area who work regularly in the Pico territory, they have individual meetings with Pico to talk about their particular projects so that's kind of like on a project by project basis. At a more strategic level, we meet a couple of times a year with their CEO and other folks, and have a lot of meetings with their public affairs people, talking about some of the bigger challenges that we've encountered. And it's not just with our Solarize Greater Philadelphia program, but it's also we are working with the city. I'm sorry, the Philadelphia Northeast Airport is contracted to install solar, and we had many issues on a previous iteration of that project that we've been brought. So we're constantly bringing issues to Pico. They are very aware of these deadlines. They say they are doing everything they can, and what we and all the installers are doing is, as soon as they have a project where they have a signed contract, they're putting in that interconnection application to find out if there's going to likely to be any issues. But it's a big challenge, no question about it.
Thanks.
Sure. John, back to you.
Okay, so do the PPAs have to be very local? Or are there any PPAs that are looking for customers?
Do you mean, so PPA, it's usually a three
Right,
party, two or
right,
three parties, right? So one
right,
party is the is the has the money and owns the system, right?
right,
That could be one or two entities. Let's just say it's one right now, one and the same.
right.
Then there's the property owner that has the roof, um, and is contracting to use the electricity that's generated from that system. Um, so those are the two main parties, and then sometimes there's like a third one, like the tenant, if the owner is different than the occupant of the building. So when you say the PPA, which of those parties are you talking about?
I was talking about the actually the client or the customer part of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more like a field in Lancaster gets solar,
Mm.
and except for the distribution problem, could Southeast PA municipalities access that?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, um, I'm not sure if the very latest on this, but there was the four collar counties to Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties, put out an RFP a couple of months ago, um, to do that very thing, to get solar. No, I'm wrong. Sorry. Stop. I'm going to finish that sentence, but it's not an answer to your question. They did a RFP to get solar on county-owned buildings on their buildings. So that's one thing that's happening. That's in progress. I think they're evaluating proposals now. But there are ways that municipalities and county governments can purchase electricity from power purchase agreements that are outside of their geographic area. So the city of Philadelphia has two systems in place, one that's been operating for several years in Adams County that I believe provides around 20% of the municipal government's electricity needs, and another project was recently contracted for that's going to produce an additional 5% of the total city's needs, and that's in somewhere in like, further northwest of Philadelphia, uh, forget where it is right now. But anyway,
Right.
so we are, so there's like, that's a three party, at least three parties. There's the city, there's the Philadelphia Energy Authority, the city, the landowner, and then the solar developer. So yes, you can absolutely, and that's what's called a virtual PPA. So you can find, you can basically buy into a project that's not on land you own. Long answer, sorry.
Well, that's okay because the July 4th thing makes new projects impossible for the tax credit, right? And then you would have to start without that. And then maybe a PPA
Yeah.
would be a good alternative to starting this project without the tax credit.
Possibly. It would depend on how if we're talking about municipalities specifically, not like private entities,
Yep.
depends on how they purchase their electricity. It's
Through the
this
PPA,
is
you
a
mean, or how they do it
well,
now.
how they in general, how they purchase electricity. Most of them will have a supply contract, that could be long term for a certain amount of kilowatt hours or megawatt hours per year. So it depends. I would love to, if we can. So I realize that I'm sharing a screen that I didn't talk about. We have these, and I see that somebody put some notes in about these projects. I'd rather, we only have like 10 minutes left. I'd love to get to conversation, and I think I'm going to stop sharing so that we can. I just have to find my share button here. Stop sharing. So that we can talk about, as EAC's members. I don't know if you call yourselves members, EAC participants. Um, how you can, how we can work with you to get the word out about this program and to let as many commercial and tax exempt entities know about it and get moving to hit that like what we think is like probably mid-October if to really realistically have a good chance of getting that tax credit. Oh, I see Bill has joined us. Bill, welcome. We had a question about I think I forget what it was.
Municipalities and
Yeah.
townships.
Yeah, and whether you can compare one township's like potential to another's, and I said I didn't think you could, but maybe you could just talk a little more about, or not more, if you could just talk a little about the project you're doing with municipalities now.
Hi, yeah, so thank you, Lisa. We had a group of 10 volunteers. We mapped rooftops for 90 municipalities in Southeast Pennsylvania. And then through analysis, we whittled it down to 70, which were, had the best option for saving financial savings on their budget, electricity budget. So we're in the process right now of trying to communicate that with the municipalities and see if they have any questions. So that's where we are. We've had a couple people on the phone say, "Hey, that sounds interesting. I didn't know about this federal tax credit. Appreciate your letting me know." Others have been a little more standoffish and are not really interested in hearing what we have to say. So, um, another approach we tried is that our sustainability director for Montgomery County, Davey Ramasukan, sent out an email to all Montgomery County, 62 Montgomery County municipalities, because the 70 we picked across Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery were really just focused on ready for 100% communities and those with EACs because we felt those were the best targets that might be willing to advocate for solar. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. Um, so, anything else that people are curious about, glad to try to answer.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Philip, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Bill, is there any way that as an EAC member, we can access that information?
Be glad to share it with you. Phil, which is your EAC?
Tredyffrin Township, Chester County.
Yeah, if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, I'll get it to you.
Okay, terrific.
May I also, this is Karen Hanson, Cheltenham. May I also access it, Bill?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad
I'll
to
put
share
my contact
it with
information in the
anybody
chat.
if they
Is
share that.
there, if nobody objects, please, we can share the email addresses of everybody who's here right now on this call. We had many more registrations than as is typical with events like this. But if you're okay with having your email address shared, we can share that with everybody after this call. I've two more things. So I would actually like to ask my colleague Amy to talk about like what the ask is here of you all, and then to also talk about how, solar is still here after the investment tax credit. But Amy, if you could just, I have a dry throat and I'm ready for somebody else to talk.
So one thing, we've had a great conversation here about townships, but the Philadelphia Energy Authority really needs your help in identifying companies that occupy their buildings and have really nice rooftops so that we can go right to them and talk to them and see if we can help them invest in solar for their rooftop. Some of them may have solar plans already and that they just need a little help to get over it and might even make that July 4th. But if we can sprint with a whole bunch of companies right now, we can meet that the December date. And so it would be great if Enjoy came up with this idea a little bit if every EAC could identify 1 to 2 companies or 2 to 3 companies that they thought were really good targets, then Atiba can go call them up and say, "Hi, would you like to invest in solar?" And we can help you do that. So it's sort of a plea that we have. that we're putting forward to you all because you're out there on the ground and you know all the firms that are in your township. So if you have any ideas, please let us know. And if you have any questions, please ask them. I can keep talking if you want me to, Lisa.
I think a little silence to get people thinking about those 2 or 3 companies is worthwhile. Well, maybe we could either Amy, you or Joy can talk about also the in-person event coming up in July.
Sure.
Oh, Joy's got her hand
Joy's got her
raised.
hand up.
So I was just going to say I'd love for someone to mention the in-person event. So Amy, if you want to overview that, that would be great. And we'll send out more info on it.
So on July 20th, we're going to have an event at Ludington Library in Bryn Mawr. That's a live event and hopefully have a special guest speaker to talk about why solar and then present about this program and be there in person with handouts and available for question and answer. Have a little bit of a snack and some beverages and talk all about solar and why you'd want to do solar on your building. For that particular event, we're really trying to target building owners that are owner-occupied facilities that have nice rooftops that in the surrounding area of Lower Merion. So that we're going to invite Delco, Montgomery County, maybe the northern northwest part of Philadelphia to try and get maybe 40 people together to talk about solar and figure out ways to move the projects forward so that we can meet that December deadline. So we're going to include that information in the thank you note that we send out after this. So you'll have that information so you can share it with your networks. David, you had a question.
Just a sort of maybe obvious one. Has anybody talked to Wawa? I mean, Wawa's got a lot of properties and they got nice open roofs and they certainly have a lot of energy demand.
They so annoy me that they have those rooftops that are designed for solar, sort of. They're never oriented particularly well, but they have no interest. So if you have somebody that you know in Wawa that you can talk to, that would be great. But for years, I have contacted Wawa to talk to them about this, and they say those are just to shed water so you can pump your gas and be dry. And I'm like, they are solar canopies. And they all we have to do is clip the solar panels onto them, and you're going to be generating your own power.
Gotta
I
have a
can't tell
Wawa.
you how frustrated I am by that.
Well, I don't know if my personal coffee purchases would carry very much weight with the whole organization, but certainly for my local Wawa, I probably represent a big portion of their income.
And you want solar powered coffee.
Absolutely.
They could change, the whole cup. It'd be great.
Yeah. I also wish it would be bird safe coffee, but that's another matter altogether.
Wow,
I
that
did.
is a whole nother matter. I've never heard of bird safe coffee. I guess you don't
Uh,
have birds flying into your coffee cup. It must be something else, but we'll save that for another day. Um,
very very quickly, bird safe coffee is coffee that's grown usually by smaller farmers where they leave the forest canopy intact and the coffee
mm,
grows underneath them in the shade, which means it remains good habitat for birds. A lot of
mm,
birds that we get are down there, you know,
wintering.
in
Yeah,
the winter, and
yeah.
so
Cool.
there you go. I did
All
have
right. Yeah, go ahead.
um, So, one of the questions that I have, it's kind of pointed. There seem to be increasing barriers to solar and renewable energy. Are most of the barriers that you see coming from the federal government, like, no more tax credits, is there stuff coming from Pennsylvania on the state side that we could work on?
Great question. So clearly the expiration of the federal tax credits is a disappointment. As Amy pointed out earlier, it doesn't mean that solar isn't feasible. It makes it takes longer to get your return on investment. In terms of why Pennsylvania specifically, we definitely have some policies that could be enacted that would support solar more and make solar more financially beneficial. And I'm going to see if we can find a link to some of the work that the Pennsylvania Solar Center has done on some of the legislation they're proposing. The biggest thing is to create policies. There's two big things. Create a policy that essentially drives up the price of the solar renewable energy credits, which has varied a lot in Pennsylvania, but is, I think, hovering around $21, $22 per megawatt hour right now. Across the river in New Jersey, it's like $60 or $70, maybe more. I haven't looked at these prices in a while. So that's one really big thing, is to basically require higher percentage of our electricity supply be from renewable energy and from solar energy. And the second thing is community solar, which with 1 minute left, we don't really have time to talk about it, but it actually would be a way for someone to invest in solar if they couldn't do it, if they don't own their own property, or if their building isn't suitable for solar, they can invest in solar somewhere else. And for, let's say, a warehouse to put solar on their roof and basically sell shares of that solar to others. Right now, they can't do that. So those are two big policy things that could change in Pennsylvania. I believe the PA Solar Center has some good information on their website that we can try to track down for you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we are at time. I love these questions. Love, love, love them. Please continue. We don't, you can email, you'll get a follow-up from Amy. You'll have all of our contact info if you haven't pulled it off of the anyway, so I haven't pulled it off of the chat, but we really appreciate your help. And if you can think of buildings that might meet our criteria, please let us know. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very much.